Well, hello retro game players. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Marcus. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. If you are a subscriber, thank you very much. And we're gonna jump right into this shit. I'm gonna be talking about the top 10 games that came out on the Sega Genesis in 1990. So go get yourself a Flintstones push pop and jam that shit down your throat. Let's get this started. Alright, so this is a follow-up video to the top 10 Sega Genesis games of 1989. So that video, honestly, was really fun to do. That was the launch year in North America. So this is the follow-up year, and I'll tell you what, there are a lot of games that came out that were quality this year. In fact, narrowing down all those games in the top 10 here was tough. And I'm leaving some behind that I really enjoy. Like, there's a lot of shoot-em-ups on the system from this year alone. So while there are some on this list, I really wanted to make sure I got a broad spectrum of genres, and that's what I did. So, you know, here we go. I will tell you too, these are the North American release dates in 1990. So it's not including Mega Drive or anything like that. So keep that in mind as we go. And let's get started. We're going to jump right in to number 10. Alright, so coming at the bottom of the list is a game that's a really good two-player co-op beat-em-up, alright? And it fits in with games like Golden Axe and also possibly Streets of Rage. I'm talking about Alien Storm. Now in Alien Storm, aliens are invading the city. You take on one of three choosable characters, so a guy with this like electric weapon, this lady with this cool flamethrower weapon, and then this robot with like a weird whip thing, right? Electric whip sort of deal. The enemies are the highlight in this game. The graphics and just how grotesque they look is actually pretty cool. And even back then, when this was out, I remember thinking it was really cool just on the enemy design alone. The controls are pretty clunky, however. It's kind of like Golden Axe in that sense. It's not very fluid, but there are some moves that you can do by like double tapping forward, jumping, and then hitting attack. So there's things like that. And then similar to Golden Axe and also Streets of Rage, you have a special attack where you call in support. So really similar to more of like Streets of Rage, how when you hit the A button, that police car would pull up and he'd launch, you know, a weapon. Similar to that, it's like a ship flies in, takes out all the enemies. So really pretty cool arcade style action. And then there's these stages when you go inside the buildings where it goes to a first person sort of shooter mode, and that's where you can really kind of power up your energy, rebuild your energy, sometimes get life. Occasionally there's like these boss aliens walking in the background, and honestly these stages are the ones that most likely will kill you in the later stages. Those get pretty hectic. They're hard to do if you're not playing with two players. So that's the only thing I would say to keep an eye out for if you're going to try and beat this game. The other thing is that there's a cool like running segment where it's almost like a shooter where you're flying through the screen and you're just destroying aliens as you're going through the stage. It's very action-packed and it's a good break in the action altogether. So honestly, this is a fun game. I wish that they may have just, I don't know, if they would have just made the action and the beat 'em up stuff a little bit more interesting, like the gameplay, the move set, it would be really good. Unfortunately, that's sort of the limitation of it. It's like the attacks are just a little bit basic sometimes, and it's just kind of clunky controls. But man, it's a classic Genesis game. So there you go, that's number 10. Let's move up to number 9. Alright, so this next game is one that I personally really like. Some people are not so into it, and that's alright. The reason people don't really like it so much, I believe, would be the slowdown. It has some seriously hardcore slowdown issues, and it's just not a great arcade port. But from somebody who played this when they were a kid, I never played the arcade game until years later. So I'm talking about Strider. Now in Strider, you're this guy who can climb up any surface, any obstacle, any building, That's one of the coolest things about it. But his weapon is legendary. And I actually honestly have to give a shout out to the sound effects in this game. The sound effects of his sword is one of those iconic sound effects that you'll hear in gaming. And the explosions are cool too, but I just love the sound of his sword as you use the attack button. And then getting it upgraded. I mean, the thing will take up half your screen pretty much. It's awesome. So when I first played this game, the style is just different, you know. It's like, it's kind of got some cool music. It's unusual music, you know. The bosses are interesting, the gorilla, the centipede, all kinds of really cool character designs. You also have this slide that you can do. There's areas where you're just falling, like free falling off of a big building or something. There's a lot to this game, and when I first played this, like I said, it was early on the Genesis. I mean, like, I was playing this thinking, like, this is awesome. Like, I thought the graphics were incredible. Now, again, the arcade game is amazing, so if you want, check that game out. But for Genesis, this is a great game. As you can see, it says 8 mega memory, which is always pretty hilarious when they advertise the size of the cart. But there you go. That's number 9. Strider to me is a classic. Let's move up to number 8. Number 8. Okay, so coming in at 8 is a game that I really enjoy. I actually have played it on the channel, but I'm talking about Atomic Robo-Kid. Now, this one is an arcade port as well, but it's really well done. I think that this is one of the more fun shoot-'em-ups on the Genesis. It's a weird shoot-'em-up in the sense of it's sort of more like, I'm not going to say it's a platformer, but you get different weapons that you can toggle between, and it sort of feels like almost like an action run and gun at times, just because of how you can select different attacks. You can pace yourself. There are like platforming elements. Your guy does have sort of a jetpack and he can fly around, so that makes that interesting. Another thing is that you have the ability to go through doors and go through different areas. You can completely like bypass sections or go through different areas and kind of get lost if you're not careful. The boss battles are very interesting. The enemies are very interesting. This is a pretty frantic game at times. I just really like the style of the artwork, the style of the music. The whole presentation to me is one of those games that I just really have loved. So Atomic Robo-Kid, this is one that I played when I was a kid. I had it when I was a kid. I love this one. So I don't expect everyone to enjoy this, but if you haven't heard of this, give it a shot. I think it'll be fun for you. It does start off a little bit tough, like I said, but you know, with some practice you'll get through it. And yeah, there you go. So that's number 8. Let's move up to number 7. Number 7. All right, so the next game is a racing game. I told you guys I was going to try and broaden the scope on this and include multiple genres. So this is an excellent racing game. If you're into this kind of stuff, I promise you will love this game. It's Super Monaco GP. I once rented this game and I played it all weekend. I mean, I'm not even kidding you. I played it Saturday, all night Saturday. Sunday, I played it by myself. And I got hooked on this game. In fact, when I had to return it the next weekend, I rented it again. So this is basically, you know, you're in an Indy car and you can kind of like challenge other race car drivers, and depending on how you do, you can actually get offered a position on their team. If you lose, you can lose your position on your team. I know it sounds a little confusing, but you can basically upgrade to faster cars that way, or lose if you start like sucking, you know. The graphics are really good. I would really say that this is way more in depth than like something like Super Hang-On, for example. This has like a career style mode where, you know, you're playing and you know, the way to beat this game is actually pretty elaborate. I'm not going to go through the whole thing here, but it's very cool. So if you enjoy racing games, this one has a lot of depth for a Genesis title, and the graphics for the Genesis are also really good. So Super Monaco GP, I highly recommend this one. If you like racing games, check it out. It totally deserves to be on this list. Let's move up to one of my favorites at number 6. Number 6. All right, so this is one of my all-time favorites. I love this game. It's by Namco. It is a shoot 'em up. I'm talking about Phelios. Now, it's funny because just the other day, I got a tweet from Mr. Toon, and he said he's been looking for this, and it's expensive. And I agree. This game, unfortunately, is expensive, complete in box, but it's one of those ones that I feel like is worth it. The reason I like the Genesis version is because something about the sound chip, the sound processing of this game is like heavy on the bass. So this is one of my favorite games, like when I was a kid, that I would hook up to a stereo and really pump the music while I played this. The sound effects, the explosions, there's crappy vocal samples, there's even some funny like sprite scaling, sort of like trying to be like mode 7 going on in this game. But basically you're a Pegasus, you're a guy on a Pegasus, and you're flying around. It's a cool, stylized shoot 'em up. And I honestly really love this game. So I can't really recommend this one enough. This one could be higher on this list, to be honest, but the other ones on this list are all really good. So I don't know, but this is one of my favorites. If I had to rebuild my Sega Genesis collection, I 100% guarantee you this would be one of my top 5 games. And that's just because, like I said, the sound effects, the style, the colors, I don't know, it just brings back a lot of nostalgia for me. But as you go, you get speed ups, meaning, you know, can fly faster. You can hold down your attack and charge up a charge meter, which is your sword basically. And when you release it, that can take out multiple enemies. That's something you'll be pretty much doing most of the time. The music does get really creepy, and the levels get creepy. The bosses are really interesting. I love this game. I freaking love it. So there you go. That's number 6. But before we move up to number 5, we've got a word from our sponsor. Let's check it out.
Who does the world's most fun cartoon character in a hot new 16-bit game? Who does Disney animation as only a 16-bit video game can? Does. Who gives you $30 cash back when you buy a new SEGA Genesis system? Buy a SEGA Genesis system now and get $30 cash back. Number 5.
All right, only 5 games left. So halfway through it, this next one is one that I remember seeing actually pictured on the back of the Genesis box. And I also had seen it in different magazines, and I thought, wow, I have got to check that out. Now, when I finally got a chance to rent this, I was blown away. It was absolutely a beautiful game. I'm talking about Mickey Mouse and the Castle of Illusion. So this is a pretty legendary game as far as platformers go. This is so different than some of the other Mickey games that came out. This is definitely by far my favorite, but it's just so well done. And Mickey is animated beautifully. The graphics are insanely cool. It just has so much style going for it. There's times where you really do feel like you're playing sort of a Disney production, which is really cool, especially when you consider this is one of the early Genesis games. So it's one of my favorites. It's one that if I'm in a bad mood or something, you know, I'll put this game on, and honestly, I'll immediately start feeling better because it just sort of cheers me up. Disney always had that effect on me, actually. It's funny because I remember when I was a kid and if I was sick or something, I would like watch cartoons and whatnot, but Mickey Mouse cartoons like really cheered me up, and Looney Tunes were hilarious, but they were on so much. It was just like, you know, reruns after reruns. But anyway, that's beside the point. Mickey is awesome on the Genesis. Check this one out. If you haven't heard of this, please go check it out. It's a very, very excellent game, and I know you guys will like it. So there you go, Castle of Illusion. Let's move up to number 4. Okay, so the number 4 game on this list is actually the 3rd game in a very cool series, and I'm talking about Thunder Force. So this is Thunder Force 3. Thunder Force 2 was on the last video. That was the 1989 game list, and that one they sort of, I don't know, in my opinion, sort of messed it up. They changed the gameplay to toggle between overhead maps that were kind of dumb, in my opinion, and then went to awesome side-scrolling levels. Fortunately, there was a code that I mentioned in that video that would let you just warp to any level. This one, they fixed. And what they did was they made it so you basically can choose any starting level you want. And they're all very cool. The graphics are very cool. The music is awesome. I actually like to use a lot of the music on this channel. But the only thing that I'll tell you is it's hard, you know? It's pretty freaking tough. So you're gonna have to really memorize patterns. But you know, in the game, you do speed up your ship. There's a button to hit. I personally like being on the pretty much the middle speed. If I'm going too fast, I'll fly into stuff. But there's sections where, you know, the maps are actually moving into you and you have to fly fast. And then you also get, you know, different power-ups, including like a reverse fire, different other weapons. If you get hit, you lose your power-up, not the weapon, but you lose your power-ups if you have any. And then if you get hit again, then you could lose the weapon that you just acquired. So that's the thing that I always try and remember, which is always hard. And you know, a lot of shoot 'em ups do this, but you'll want to toggle away from the weapon you're on if it's upgraded and it's one of your favorites. You want to toggle to another one if you think you might die. And that's one of those like balancing risk and reward scenarios, you know. But yeah, this game is a blast. It's not my favorite in the series. That one might be coming up, I'm not sure. But I love this series. This is definitely, in my opinion, more fun than the second one. So if you're gonna get one, I would recommend this one. Thunder Force 3, that's number 4. We've only got 3 left. What can they be? Let's check them out. All right, so we're down to the wire, only 3 games left. These all share a common trait, and it's gonna be a high learning curve, all right? And not really just a high learning curve, but also moments of brutal difficulty. Hair-pulling frustration. All 3 of these will have this. But they're all excellent games. They all deserve to be in the top 3. Let's start off by talking about a very, very high quality RPG. I'm talking about Phantasy Star 2. So if you're not familiar with the series, it's set in a universe with really cool sci-fi elements. So it's not like, you know, old medieval types of RPGs. This is like a futuristic sci-fi sort of world. And that's one of the big draws, in my opinion, is that it kind of breaks the mold of like, you know, orcs and mages and stuff. And it sort of like has like weaponry and just, I don't know, just really cool stuff. The first time I saw this game, I went to a friend's house. I had heard about this. He had been playing it for like, I don't know, a couple weeks or something. And I went over to his house, and while I was watching him play, I quickly realized that these dungeons he was in were sprawling. And then I started to realize that he had this notebook that he had been drawing out on like grid paper, all these maps and all these different, like basically labyrinths of dungeon crawling maps. And watching him play it, he was taking notes, he was like, right, and I was like, wow, this is intense, you know? I did eventually get to play it, but it wasn't for like maybe another month before I rented it. And it starts off real basic, you're not gonna have any issues, but like it gets tough really quick. And I just have to say, you have to basically draw your own maps or print something out. If you're gonna go online, you can print something out to help you, because it is brutal. I mean, we're talking like, there's no way you'll remember this as you're playing, but the gameplay itself is awesome. It is addictive. The story's really good. There's like something like 30 hours on this cart of gameplay. Like I'm pretty sure that the first time I finished it, it took me way over that actually. So I don't know if that's just because I was a kid. I think it was. I was like having issues making my maps and stuff, but I mean, I don't even remember how long it took me, but I'm telling you guys, this is a 30-hour plus game. It is a blast. So if you're looking for some serious retro goodness as far as an RPG, check this out. I love the sci-fi element too. So there you go. That's number 3. Let's move up to number 2. Okay, so coming in at 2 is a game that I have to tell you, when I played it on the channel for the first time, I sucked. I sucked bad. And now that I've had some time to get through it, I realize the error of my ways while playing that game. This is a game that I recently got in a pickup video. So it was one that came with a really awesome pickup video. and that's why I actually started to play it. But this is an amazing shoot 'em up, all right? And I'm talking about MUSHA. So in this game, the way to really describe it to somebody who, is coming in fresh is that it's a frantic shoot 'em up. And I mean like really intense. The first level alone is so cool. The music is amazing. The graphics are cool. The enemies are really awesome. It is one of the better, more furious shoot 'em ups on the SEGA Genesis. And the thing is as you go, there's basically 3 different weapon types that you can get. And the key for me when I was playing it was to really focus on upgrading one of those 3. So I would try and upgrade, whichever weapon type I wanted, because you don't toggle between weapons. You can switch when you see the weapon power up, you can switch to that color. So there's basically 3 different types based on color. When you collect 3 of the same color, not only is your weapon powering up, but then you get like this little drone. And then as you go, you can shift the attack formation of your drones, which is pretty insane. So you can have them rotate around, you can have them do different things. I preferred the, I think it's called the free form. That's the one that I really stick with. It is so cool once you get the hang of this. The thing that's pretty tough is the size of your ship, and just kind of being aware of that with all the different like bullet hell style stuff that's happening. So this is one of those games that, like I said in the last game, it's got a high difficulty level. It does get really frustrating at times, but once you kind of figure out what to do, it does get easier. It just takes a lot of practice. So I highly recommend you guys check this one out. Of course, this is one of those games that shot up in value in the last, I'd say even 15 years. It just shot up, all right? So it's unfortunately hard to find. But what can I say? You guys know what to do, right? You guys can find it. So check it out. Play it if you haven't. It's worth checking out. There's also repros. I actually have a repro. And it's just like the Alest series. I can't remember the actual name, but it's the Alest series. And it's really good. So check it out. Highly recommend this one. Let's move up to number 1. All right, so that was 9 awesome games. There's only 1 left. And this one really deserves to be on the top based on just how influential it was on an entire genre of games. I'm talking about Herzog's Y. So this is one of the, I would say, grandfathers of the RTS or real-time strategy genres. Games like Dune on Genesis, Command & Conquer, Warcraft, StarCraft, Total Annihilation. Any of those RTS games really did, I would say, borrow elements from this type of gameplay. So in this game, you can play 1 or 2 players. When you play 2 players, you have a split screen. But interestingly enough, 1 player lets you either do full screen or a split screen where you can keep an eye on the computer AI. And what it is you choose first the level you're going to play. And you can choose the difficulty, which is also very cool. And then you start out with like a main base and then a few little other bases that are occupied. And your enemy starts out with a main base and a few other bases that are occupied as well by their forces. Then there's neutral bases, and those are white. And basically what you want to do is try and build up your army, slowly not only defend your bases, but take over the neutral bases, and then slowly take on their bases, and then eventually issue orders to take over their main base and take over and win the game. It's much harder than it sounds, at least at first, but what happens is you start out with currency, you start building infantry, you have tanks, motorcycles, armored kind of cars, anti-aircraft, different things like that, and then you have like this ship that you can fly around and you can inspect and check out like different areas on the map, but it's also your transport. So on the main base, you will issue orders to create a certain infantry type, and then once it tells you it's done, you drive it, or I would say fly it, to wherever you want it to go. Whenever you're flying, you use gas or fuel, and when you have something that you're carrying, you actually deplete fuel much faster, so it can get pretty tricky. But you want to bring all your infantry to a base to occupy or defend it, or to attack one of your opponent's bases. And the other thing that's cool is not only are you creating infantry, but you're creating infantry with a specific order set. So either like attack on sight, attack a certain radius, or maybe deploy them to go take over the nearest base. Or once you're really ready, you can deploy pretty much anything you create to attack the main base of your enemy at that point. And you can kind of gauge that because at the top of the screen, it shows like the energy of your enemy. And you can wait until you start really like taking over all the unoccupied bases, maybe taking over some of their bases. And so that is how you know when you issue that final command. You're playing this guy who is two different things. One is you're like an airplane, like I said, you can transport and check out different areas on the map, but you also have a gun, so you can fly around in this sort of aircraft. You can shoot other enemy units. You can also shoot the other enemy that's flying around, which is not really great as far as battle, but or control, but it's still cool. And then if there's ground units, you can hit a button where you turn into just a big robot on the ground, and he can go around and shoot and take care of like any ground units that might be in your way. And then you can just hit a button, you toggle back to the airplane. So it's really about resource management, time management. You're going against the clock, which is why I like real-time strategy games. I like that it's not turn-based. I like that it's just all happening and you have to do things quickly. I think it's awesome. So it's one of those style genres that I really like gravitated to, especially because I really got into PC gaming in like the mid to late 90s, and all those RTSs were just huge for me. But this is one of those games that I feel like really deserves to be recognized and high up on this list. So that's why it's number one. I highly recommend you guys check this out if you like that kind of gameplay. But that's it for this list, you guys. I really appreciate it. So I definitely want to say too, I've got another video coming out here for Halloween. I think you guys might know the series. If you remember Retro Gaming Sunset, I've assembled an awesome group of guest members that are going to be bringing you guys some pretty cool segments for that. So look forward to that. That's coming up. And until next time, you guys know what to do. You keep that shit retro by playing Herzog Zwei on the SEGA Genesis later on.